Hey everybody, it's Jim Kukral, and I want to thank you all for stopping by today to watch this special podcast that I put together with Joanna Penn from The Creative Penn. How you doing, Joanna?
I'm great. Thanks for having me, Jim.
So it's great to have you on because you are a fiction writer and an expert marketing author, and I wanted to learn more about the fiction business because I'm a nonfiction guy. And a little primer for most people who aren't authors. Fiction is like there's so many more people who read fiction stuff,
Yeah.
and not as many people read nonfiction. Even though if you look at some of the stats, they'll say nonfiction outsells fiction. But in today's world, when we're talking about digital books and things like that, it's much I don't want to say easier, but there's a way to be more successful selling fiction than there is nonfiction in today's marketplace, which is 2012's early, right? Wouldn't you agree?
No, definitely. It's about volume, and people eat Kindle books like candy.
Yeah.
Fiction
so
books.
Before we get started, I want to give a little brief intro that I have for you. I'm going to look over here and read it. Joanna Penn is the author of thriller novels Pentecost and Prophecy, both of which I need to read. Her site, thecreativepenn.com, helps people write, publish, and market their books and has been voted one of the top 10 blogs for authors 2 years running. Pentecost is also the #1 on the action-adventure free charts right now. Over 5,000 copies downloaded. And, wow, that's pretty amazing.
I should say that's today. 5,000 today.
Oh, it's just today?
Yeah.
Holy moly. Okay, so I guess the point is for people watching this is that you know what the heck you're doing. You're publishing books, you're marketing the books, and you're selling and getting people to download your books, which is what people need to hear about. So let's talk about fiction a little bit first here.
Yeah.
How long have you been doing fiction, and how many books have you put out?
Right. Well, I actually started off as a non-fiction author as well. I wrote a book on career change about 4 years ago. So that was really because I was an IT consultant, miserable in my job. So I wrote a non-fiction book, and it didn't sell very well, basically. And
Really?
yeah, at the time I didn't know anything about marketing, so this was kind of the journey. I went, I must be able to sell books, this is ridiculous. So that's when I started to learn about marketing, list building, all of this type of stuff that you know a lot about. So that's when I started writing, and then I've always wanted to write fiction, but I thought I just would never be good enough to write a Booker Prize winner or a Pulitzer Prize winning novel. Now, that's a silly block, really, because most people don't read that. They don't actually sell that well. And those people don't make a lot of money. I mean, the people who are making money in fiction, James Patterson, Nora Roberts, J.K. Rowling, obviously, but someone like James Patterson, Nora Roberts, they're doing a lot of books over time, and they're making money. And I thought, actually, I can write a book like that. Hence, about 2.5 years ago, I started writing my first novel, Pentecost, on NaNoWriMo, which is National Novel Writing Month in November. So if people are interested in writing fiction, I suggest they check out nanowrimo.org, I think it is, and give that a go, because it really helps you with a lot of tips and everything to get going. So after I wrote Pentecost, I was like, should I go to a publisher? Nah. So I self-published it using everything I learned about marketing, and I have actually sold over 20,000. And at the moment, I'm using the free technique. So I just thought I'd mention. We'll come back to free. But then the second one, Prophecy, has just come out last week and debuted above Lee Child in the action adventure list, the paid list. So that's actually selling. Obviously only for about a couple of hours because Lee Child is Lee Child. But I have the screen print, So essentially, I guess I've been writing fiction only a couple of years. I'm on the third book now, Exodus. And yeah, it's a kick-ass action adventure series.
It just seems so intimidating to me because my books are I write like I talk, and I'm a teacher, and I write very, I don't know how to put it. It's very conversational. And I just don't. I've tried to write short stories and things like that in a fiction type, and it doesn't flow. Was it a big transition, or did it just flow out, or did you have to really figure out how to do it?
you have to figure out how to do it. There is a way to write fiction.
Yeah.
And as a non-fiction, you know, I was in IT and I was a management consultant. I wrote non-fiction for years. Hence the block, same block you have. It's like I write like this. But we're adaptable, you know. And I guess you have to learn the process. It's like starting all over again, and that's why I blog. I blog about the things I learn. And a lot of what I blog about now is how to write fiction, because it's so different to non-fiction. But really, I think the thing that changed my fiction writing life, and I'll give everyone this tip, is I took a book that I wanted to write like. And for me, James Rollins, who's a action adventure thriller writer, is my guy. So I took one of his books, The Doomsday Key, and I studied it. Like, I studied how it worked, what his first line was, what the last line was, how long the chapters were, whose point of view it was written from, what happens in the scene, how, you know, is there a fight scene, you know, are they this long or this long, the pacing. I took about 2 days to totally analyse his novel, and then that's not copying, as you know, that's learning a process. And then when I wrote my book, I used his guidelines, like start with a bang, end on a cliffhanger, have short chapters followed by longer chapters, have a fight scene followed by a quieter scene. You know, I used that. So you have to learn. It's another way of learning, like everything else.
Yeah, you know, that sounds perfectly acceptable to me. I always advise people who want to start, you know, if somebody wanted to start an online bookstore, you know, where would they go? Go look at Amazon. Yeah. You know, don't copy them, but look at, you know, they've spent years figuring out the formula for why it works, why people buy, how to lay out things. I mean, you don't steal from people, but it's a good business decision to go look at what successful people have done. So that makes total sense to me.
Yeah.
And some people view it as stealing, but it's not. It's business. And
it's modeling.
Perhaps that's the biggest problem that I see with a lot of people. They're just not business people, you know, and they don't get that concept. They don't get that what you're doing, writing your fiction and everything you're doing is a business. You're putting out books to build your brand and to earn revenue. And of course you love it, obviously. So it's not work, right? But
it's still work, and it is hard work. You know, writing a fiction book, from my perspective, is a lot harder than non-fiction. It's a lot harder.
Let's talk about that, because you know, fiction, in my opinion, the future of nonfiction books are books between 10 and 30,000 words. You know, if you're going to write a book about email marketing or, you know, how to make chili, no one wants to read 100,000 words on how to make chili, right? You know, so I think that nonfiction books are probably going to be within that range, which I'll call micro books. But for fiction books, what does the length have to be? What is the I guess the better question is, what is the expectation to the reader? Because that's really who you're writing for. Do they want to read a short book, or do they want to read something that's 100,000 words? What do you think?
Well, I think you've got it right there, the expectation of the reader. And that's where you have to choose, as a writer, who you're appealing to. So the length is a totally random question, because you could write short stories, action-adventure short stories, and put them out at 10,000 words and 99 cents, and there would be a market. That's not a market I choose. I write for kind of James Patterson 60 to 80,000 thriller length novels.
It's a lot of words.
Yeah, it is a lot of words, but also that is a fully edited. Now, there's a massive difference between the editing process and rewriting process for novels than there is for non-fiction. Again, reader expectation. They want developed characters, good scenes, settings. They want to be in this fictive dream of escaping their life for a few hours or a few days. So you have to give them that. And that's the creative process that is a lot kind of deeper than often writing non-fiction is. And that's, like you said, if you want to write romance, go read a lot of romance. Or generally you probably want to write what you read. So I read thrillers and I read action adventure, and I love action movies. So that's what I'm going to write. I also read literary fiction, prize-winning fiction, but I'm not actually going to write that at this point, because as you say, I'm a business person too, and I want to sell my books. So if people don't mind about the money, write the book on your heart. But if you want to actually make some money and sell it, then writing a book that already has an audience is a really good idea.
Well, that's what this is all about. And that's what you and I do. So let's stick with that, because I'm more interested, I mean, it would be great if I was independently wealthy and I could sit and write books all day that I just wanted to read and not have to worry about people buying them. But the truth is that most people nowadays, want to use a book to earn a little bit of revenue or to build their brand. So I write books with an agenda.
Yeah.
I know you write books with an agenda, obviously to sell more books, and it's a lot of work. Fiction versus nonfiction, we can go on all day about that. I wish I could write fiction. I really do, because there's really a much bigger opportunity right now today for fiction authors to sell their books. And here's why I believe so much so, because there are people who buy books for different reasons. When you buy a fiction book, you buy it just like exactly what you said. You're buying it to escape. You're buying entertainment. You're buying going to the movies for 3 hours and sitting without having to think about other things, right?
Yeah.
Isn't that why people buy fiction?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And when they go to buy a nonfiction book about, internet marketing, I think that people buy it because they want to feel better about themselves. They want to learn. They want to make their lives better. But it's a totally different. So it's important for people watching this to understand why people buy. And people buy for different reasons, and fiction versus nonfiction is totally different. Wouldn't you agree?
It is, but I would also say up front that making money out of fiction is one of those slow starts. I have 2 books out right now, and my income has gone up since I got the second book. But it takes me longer to write fiction than it does nonfiction. If you want to make money like next month, don't sit down to start writing a novel today. If you want to I can see more for me a 3 to 5 year plan where I'll be making as much money as I did when I had a day job. There's a lot of easier ways to make money than write fiction. Sure. However, saying that, it's totally what I love doing, and it is a lot of fun, and I can see the future, because of course once you have one novel, that will keep earning for you for the rest of your life and your children's lives.
Right. And I have the same plan as well, just in the nonfiction space, 20 to 30 books up in the next 3 to 5 years, and hope that 1 or 2 of them hits and sells, big. And
exactly.
that just feeds your backlist. We have the same plan, right?
Yeah.
Our plan is contingent upon writing a lot of books.
Yes.
And it's going to be harder for you because you have to write, 100,000 word novels, and I have to write, 20,000 word ones. So, but it's a really interesting concept, and I think it's something that a lot of people need to think about. There's the underlying problem to this whole thing is that writing books is still hard, even if you know a lot about something. And this is the big thing that stops most people I run into is fiction or nonfiction. They just get completely intimidated by the process of it being a book. Even if I say it's only going to have to be 10,000 words, just write it down. They're so intimidated by that concept. And I got to imagine that for the fiction end of it, it's got to be very intimidating as well.
It is, and in fact most people who talk about writing a book, of course, never write one. I actually was on a writing weekend this last weekend, and most people in the room don't even have anything written down. So yeah, it takes a long time, but equally, you and I know a lot of things is about finishing. It's about finishing, and for fiction writers, finishing the first draft is critical, and that it should be a load of crap. Basically, your first draft is a load of crap. I say it's like Michelangelo with the block of marble that he then makes into David. Writers have to make the block of marble first, and that the block is the first draft, and then your subsequent drafts are cutting it away down to the perfect Michelangelo's David. So for fiction writers, drafting and rewriting is a lot more work. It can take longer than the first draft. Whereas I think for non-fiction, it doesn't take that much editing.
So let's talk a little bit about how you market your books, because that's interesting to me, as I help people with that, and you help people with that. So how do you market your books? I noticed that you're obviously promoting the book ahead of time, and then you're doing things like this to get the word out about the book as well. But kind of give us a rundown of what you do to market a book. When does it start?
Well, you know that's such a big question. It's like, so when does it start? I mean, for many people, the marketing should start when you start writing, and for non-fiction, I think that's true, definitely. But I also want to change this conversation a little bit to what I've discovered as to the big ticket items around things. So, for example, I spent several years blogging and building up an audience, but nowadays I don't recommend that for people who have just written a fiction novel. So let's switch that round to talking about it in order of impact on sales. Is that all right?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah. So the biggest thing as a Kindle user, and I guess we're talking about ebooks, I sell 97% ebook sales, and so much so I'm not bothering with print. So we'll just talk about e-readers. All e-readers have this sampling mechanism. So you find out about the book, and we'll come back to that. You click yes, and you get a sample. So the first 15% has to be super good, otherwise you won't get a sale. So obviously you need a good book, but equally the first 15% has to be seriously good, and the first chapter has to be even better. So before we even get to anything else, you have to have this book that stands out. I hope that is kind of expected, but I get so, like, I had someone just today counselling. Well, I do like coaching and consulting and stuff, not counselling, and I basically it can be like that.
Counseling, if you've ever marketed a book, you need counseling.
Yeah, but I basically cut out 80% of his first 2 chapters, right to the point of which something happened. Because you have to do that sometimes. You have to cut. So I think, writing the great book is critical. And I guess for nonfiction, sampling is pretty similar in that way.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's as much because, again, I think that the reasons people buy nonfiction's books, I think they're more easily convinced by titles and the person selling it.
Yes.
And I think the fiction stuff is more like going to see a movie. It's like, they're like, boy, if the trailer looked good, I'm probably going to invest my time and effort into it.
Yeah,
exactly. I think it's a little bit different.
It is. And you made a good point there about who's written it. Certainly for new fiction authors like myself, I mean, for Lee Child, clearly people go and buy a Lee Child book. For the vast majority of authors, the author, certainly new authors, they're not the point. So I guess I'm talking here about if you're a new fiction author and you don't really have a name yet, you're not a brand name. So having a great cover is also massively critical, and I recommend people pay to get a professional cover designer because, and it has to be optimized for thumbnail. And the number of covers you see where you can't read the writing or they're not bold enough. So having a great cover is also critical in that way. Thirdly, sorry.
Go ahead. Keep going.
Yeah, keep going. I've got this list here because these are the things that need to be in place. Thirdly, price is really important for fiction, especially again as a new author. So you'll see that new indie, independent published, and even mainstream publishing now is pricing fiction ebooks down between 99 cents to $2.99. Really not that many are over $4.99, $5.99 unless they are brand name authors.
Yeah.
And I think we've discussed this, that in non-fiction you can price higher than fiction. Yes. Yeah. So that's really critical. And then the next thing, again, and all of this, none of this is about blogging or social networking or all of that. This is all about the book sites, because people buy books from book sites. They're not likely to buy your book from your own website or anything about you. When we're talking about selling 20,000 books, in a few months or whatever, or as a friend of mine did, 240,000 books in a month. Wow. It's about people finding it on the site. So the next thing that's important is the category. And a lot of people get this wrong as well. So you're allowed 2 categories on the Kindle and, equally on some of the other iBookstore and Nook and that. And you have to look at what are the expectations of the readers in the category. So, and you do have to find a box for yourself. Sorry, but you can't just be good for everyone. So, and also it's best to look at a category you can rank in. So you don't want, I don't want to be in thriller because thriller is completely full of brand name authors. But action adventure, I can rank in, and I also rank in religious fiction, even though it's not a Christian book, it's got aspects of religion in it. So if you rank if you rank and you have good reviews as well, which is another thing, all of these things go into the algorithms that the book sites use to promote your book. So you've probably, if you're on Amazon, which you are, you get an email that says, hello, just to tell you, you bought this, you would also like this.
Right, yeah. That's huge.
That is how people sell 240,000 copies in a month.
and it's let's be honest, Amazon's in this to make a lot of money, and they're going to promote the things that their system is built to promote things that are going to help them make more money. And if you write something good and you do your job the right way, hopefully Amazon likes you and includes you in those things and similar items, and it shows up on the bottom of the screen. Other people have bought this, and you're exactly right. That is how you sell. You go from here to here, right?
Yeah, and actually what we found as fiction authors is it's basically outside your control.
It is.
You don't seem to know what will catch fire as such. For John Locke, it was his book Saving Rachel just suddenly boomed, and he was made $1 million on the Kindle in like a month. And for my friend CJ, it was this one book, Blind Faith, just went. Mill River Recluse, that's the other one from last year, 400,000 copies. Yeah. Nobody knows. She doesn't even have a website, Jim.
It's funny. You bring up a really good point, which is that the book authoring business, first of all, you have to write a good book, okay? You have to write a good book. And you can do as much work as you possibly can to market it and everything and build as big a platform as you can, but the truth is that there is this one thing that you've got to have some luck in order for your book to be successful. Isn't that, it's very frustrating for me as a marketer and as a business person to accept that. But the more I read about authors and their stories and how successful they've been, Joe Conrath and those kind of, he'll always tell you, look, I wrote a lot of books, but I got lucky. And then all of a sudden, So I guess my point is this: do you believe that? Number one, I think you do, and number two, do you agree then that the smart business model is to write as many books as you can, and then hope that one of them gets lucky so that it could work out? Is that your plan as well?
Interestingly, Conrath shared his screen print of his numbers, and what you'll see about his numbers, he does have a lot of books, and it will be like 2,000 copies of this sold this month, but then it's like 15 copies, 80 copies, 100 copies. Because he's got so many books, it all adds up. So one, you have to keep writing books, because fiction, as soon as someone's finished one book, they want to read the next one. So writing a series is critical as well. But 3, maximizing your chances of being lucky. So all the other things we're going to talk about, social media and all of that, fair enough, because at some point the social, word of mouth still counts. But I also think that you have to keep trying to, one, write what you love, so and write what you enjoy, so you can keep doing it over a long time, because it's not just about the money. And then I guess secondly, try and hit that market that it wouldn't, not write to the market. I don't mean that. I just mean give people what they want. A fun adventure read that's for me. That they will enjoy. So I guess being focused on your author brand, because every book you put out adds to your reputation as an author. And yeah, there's a lot of luck, but I also think that John Locke had 8 books out at the same time. Amanda Hocking had 8 or 9. These guys, and they were working for a long. Amanda Hocking's been writing for 12 years. Yeah,
there's a common misperception with all of these stories you see in self-publishing or anything, is that these people have complete overnight successes, which is they always rephrase it as the American dream, or but the truth is that I've been doing this I've been in internet marketing for 16 years, and I still haven't gotten my big gigantic moment. And here's what's going to happen when I get to that point where I sell 400,000 books or something, inevitably somebody's going to write an article going, "Wow, Jim is an overnight sensation making," and it's like, no, I've been working for 16 years to
Yep.
build this brand and do all this stuff. So it's very frustrating for me, but it's very frustrating to see that people overlook that. I mean, it's a lot of work, and only like a tiny, tiny percentage of people can just get that little tiny bit of work they put in and just become overnight successes. And that's exactly what you were saying. These people have books and they've been writing for a long time, right?
Yeah, and I personally look at the top 10 best-selling authors in the world as people I look up to. And, with some exceptions, J.K. Rowling wrote, breakout books. But you've got, Patterson, who's been writing a long time and has a lot of authors working for him. I mean, Stephen King's been writing for like 40 years, and it took him how many books to get there? What's her name? The people who, Kathy Reichs and that, they have like 26 books in a series. The people who are making millions from fiction are people who write regularly. Nora Roberts writes 12 books a year.
Yeah.
These people work hard and they are career authors, and that's where I'm heading. And I've got 2 books so far. So when I hit 40, then we'll have another chat.
Okay. So let's switch gears. I want to talk about the publishing versus self-publishing industry. You know my story. I published my first real book with a publisher, and I've since been self-publishing since then. You've already said that you were decided not to go the traditional publishing route. You decided to self-publish. Why was that?
I think because I just spent the last however many, 2 years before that, learning how to do online marketing, and I also had learned a lot about the publishing industry. So at that point I knew what the industry was doing. I knew I had a Kindle. I knew how that worked. I knew I could publish my book and to see what happened. So I thought, I also know that as a first-time fiction author you are worthless and you have to go crawling to people like, read my book please, I'm worth something, and I wasn't prepared to do that. What I wanted to do was and I still haven't done it yet, but I may well do at some point, go to an agent and say, I have an audience, I have 3 or 5 books or whatever, I've proven my marketing ability, now what deal can you get me? I don't want to go crawling, I want to go with something that people want, and I think you can get a better deal that way. But in the meantime, I'm making, a couple of grand a month from fiction, which, it's good.
So I want to understand why you would do that. Would it be the money, the money, or what can Vanity Legacy Publishing give you now that you can't get on your own?
Okay, there are probably 2 major things. One is that I want to be a good writer. And at the moment I'm hiring freelance editors to help me improve my work. But if you can, and this is where the shopping around in the industry goes, there are some amazing editors who've been working with brilliant authors, like Lee Child, over years, that if you can get the right deal, you can get one of these editors to work with you, and over time so it's not about the money, it's actually about development as an author. So that for me is like the number one. I want to be better. So that's one reason. The second reason is that although ebook sales have gone up to whatever they are, 20-30%, certainly here in England they're not that big, they're at 10%, but print audience is something that it can expand your author profile and can also can bring you to a new lot of readers. So that's be the second thing, is that I'd quite like a print deal. I can't be bothered with print myself, and it's just another way. And the third reason is I'm not someone who's going to take 2 years to write a book. I'm someone who's going to write faster. So even if, say, I get a good deal and I sell my series to a publisher, I can still do indie at the same time. So I can be a hybrid, when they're now calling them hybrid authors, people who have a book deal for one series, for example, but still release their own fiction on the side, like my friend CJ Lyons, who did that 240,000. She does both. Therefore, she can maximise income with some books and maximise the rest with the other book. Does that make sense?
It does, if you can get a publisher to give you that agreement. you know.
Yeah,
And I think
exactly.
that they're more flexible nowadays because, they have to be.
Yes, exactly right. So you have to, I think people need to learn, and I've been learning all about how agents work, how publishing works, how contracts work. I know the clauses that have to go in contracts to enable those things to work. So if you know what you're doing and you're not blinded by kind of, oh, someone's picked me, and if you don't actually care almost, like I have nothing to lose by going into that situation, but also I'm not that bothered because I can do it myself. So I think if
But
you go in with your eyes open, you can do well.
I would disagree that you have nothing to lose, though. I mean, the traditional publishing model, business model, to me, just does not make any business sense. The only way it makes business sense is if they give you a signing bonus that is so big that you think it's more money than you can make from sales of digital book on your own over the next 3 to 5 years. And they're not going to do that anymore unless you're a proven author, right? I mean,
Well, that's the money argument, but that's also an old business model, and a lot of publishers now are doing like Amazon, for example, don't do massive
yeah,
advances. They do higher profit share or higher royalty share. So
I would
things are
get an
changing.
deal in a second.
Mm,
A second, because they're gonna still give you your high percentage, and they're gonna promote you. So
mm,
that's a no brainer. But what I'm
mm,
talking about is the old Big Six traditional publishing contracts, where they want to give you 17.5% commission on every book sold, and they're Joe Conrath said something on a blog post the other day. He said, when he was discussing the difference between self-publishing and traditional, he said, "What's going to happen when there are as many e-readers as there are MP3 players?" And I thought to myself, that's pretty poignant thought, because think about how many MP3 players there are in the world now, as opposed to when it first started out.
mm,
And think about that.
mm.
Kindles, they're selling 6 million Kindle Fires over the last 2 months. And think about that in 2 years from now, when there are potentially as many e-readers as there are MP3 players. And then I look at the combination of that plus the traditional publishing model, and I just cannot justify in my head
Mm.
why you would give your rights away to your book to somebody who doesn't understand the market, and who just is so focused on print books. Now, I kind of get what you said in terms of the vanity of and having the fiction and having the print book in. But are you buying that, what I'm trying to say here?
Oh, yeah, and Jim, I mean, obviously, I am indie. I'm not. I'm just saying that there are reasons that some people want traditional publishing deal, and also
Yes.
a lot of publishers are. I mean, I know a lot of publishing people, and there's some awesome people doing awesome things, and also publishers who are focusing on digital, and publishers who are trying to change the model. So when there aren't just 6 publishers in the world, there are a lot more. So I
Right.
think if people, I think the most important thing is people look at what they want for themselves and their life, like not just today, but the next 10. For me, I look at the next 50 years. What do I want? And then I also think that my books are not special snowflakes. I can create more of them. So and also you don't sell the rights to your book. You license the copyright for a period. So if you only license that, and this is what my friend CJ's just done, license it for X, a year, or until they can't sell more than 20,000 a month or whatever, you get the rights back. So it's not like these books disappear. People just have to know what they're doing, and most people don't do enough research.
So call Joanna, email Joanna before you sign your contract and shit.
No, get a
Right?
lawyer. Get a lawyer.
Get a lawyer. Okay.
Yeah.
So I want to wrap up here and just
Oh,
kind of
before you wrap up, I did
yeah.
actually. I wanted to mention the free. The free.
Yes, let's do it.
Yeah. So what I'm just doing at the moment is Amazon have this thing called KDP Select, which I know you know about. But for people who don't, you have to be exclusive to Amazon, but you opt in for a period like 3 months, and then you get 5 days where you can put your book for free. And what that does, if people are like, oh, but where's the money? It gets people reading your book, it gets you up the charts, and it also gets Amazon's algorithm working with other data, which is really important. When you come off the free period, people's sales stay quite high, and people are making quite a lot of money in the period after the free period. The other thing is I've done this, so I've put my first book in the series for free, so that the second one, which is at $2.99, sells more books, and that is exactly what's happening. So that's the kind of the free thing. But the other thing I wanted to mention that I think is different to nonfiction is that the paid promotion to sites like Pixel of Ink or Kindle Nation Daily, which you can pay. So I paid like $250 or something for them to send an email to like 100,000 Kindle users saying this book is available. And then I think I sold over 1,000 that day. So essentially I more than made back the money, but also I got a whole load more readers. So those tactics are also something that you don't need a website or Twitter, or all the relationship marketing that you and I know is the basis to a platform and does take a long time. If people are just coming in, they can do this stuff without that background and still do really well.
Yeah, there's a lot to it, as both of us know, there's a lot to it, but there is absolutely a potential for people to be very successful on their own without having to have a 16-year career and building all that stuff. So I think that's what you're trying to say. So everyone needs to go out and get a copy of Joanna's books. Go to thecreativepen.com, and I'm sure you have your books listed right there, right?
I do, or you can get them on Amazon, Pentecost and Prophecy, kick-ass action-adventure thrillers.
Ooh, kick-ass
action
adventure. Is that the tagline that goes right on the front? Kick-ass.
They should be, but
The starburst and a kick-ass, you should have that. I'm very excited. I'm going to download them both. I don't read a lot of fiction. I don't. I don't have time. So, but I want to get into it, and I want to learn how to do it, so maybe we'll have this conversation in a couple of years when I attempt a fiction book. So everyone go to thecreativepen.com. I'm going to get this post up so people are watching this today. How long will the book's going to be free for? What, a couple of days only?
Yep,
right?
But Pentecost will still be free the next 2 days. Otherwise, it's only 99 cents, and Prophecy's at $2.99. So yeah, check it out.
Yeah, check it out, and check out thecreativepen.com as well. And I think we're done. Joanna, thanks so much for being here, and really appreciate your insights on the business, and I hope you sell 400,000 books.
Thanks so much, Jim. I've really enjoyed it.